mother-in-law announced to the entire room that I had been stealing from my own husband. And instead of defending myself, I walked to the kitchen counter, picked up my phone, and asked if anyone had the Wi-Fi password. What happened next is something our family still talks about, but not about me. My name is Sophie. I'm 31 years old, and I've been married to my husband James for 6 years. We live in a two-bedroom house in Columbus, Ohio, the same city where James grew up, where his parents still live 15 minutes away, and where his older sister Bridget has spent the better part of a decade making it very clear that she does not think I belong in her family. I want to be fair about this. Bridget was never openly cruel. She never said anything that you could point to in a room full of people and say, "See, that's the problem." It was always softer than that. The way she would ask how much my dress cost at family dinners. The way she would mention, casually, that James used to date a girl who had a really impressive career. The way she once told my mother-in-law, loud enough for me to hear from the next room, that she just hoped James wasn't carrying everything on his own. James knew his sister had an edge to her. He'd grown up with it. He mostly brushed it off, which I understood because she was his sister and he loved her. I loved him. So I let it go too. For years, I told myself that families are complicated, that Bridget wasn't all bad, that she had her own insecurities she was working through. I kept the peace. I kept my mouth shut. I kept smiling at every holiday dinner and every birthday party and every backyard barbecue where Bridget would find some small way to make me feel like a guest in my own marriage. That patience lasted right up until the Sunday afternoon of James's parents' 40th wedding anniversary party. His parents had rented out the back room of a restaurant in their neighborhood. About 40 people came, cousins, old family friends, people I recognized from Christmas cards, and people I had never met before that day. The room was warm and bright, with gold tablecloths and a slideshow running on a screen at the front, showing photographs of James's parents from the past 4 decades. It was genuinely a beautiful afternoon. I had spent 3 weeks helping organize it. I had called the restaurant, confirmed the catering, designed the slideshow, ordered the flowers. James had helped, of course, but he was also managing a busy week at work, so most of the coordination had landed on me, and I had been happy to do it because I love his parents. His mom Carol has always been kind to me. His dad Frank once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to his son. And I keep that in a small place in my heart for hard days. Bridget knew I had organized the party. She had offered to help early on and then cancelled twice, so she knew exactly how much work I had put in, which made what she did that afternoon even harder to understand. We were about 2 hours into the party. People were eating, the music was low, someone was telling a long story near the bar that kept making the older guests laugh. James was across the room talking to a cousin he hadn't seen in years. I was standing near the dessert table with a glass of iced tea, talking to Carol, when I noticed Bridget across the room. She was standing with two of James's aunts and she was showing them something on her phone. One of the aunts looked at the screen, then she looked at me, then she quickly looked away. My stomach dropped. I had seen that look before. Not from that aunt specifically, but from Bridget. That quiet, satisfied look of someone who has already decided how a story ends. I kept talking to Carol, but part of my attention stayed on Bridget. A few minutes later, she moved to another group. Same thing. She'd show the phone, they'd look at the screen. Someone would glance at me, and then she'd move on. She was working the room, methodically, carefully, like she had a plan. James's dad tapped his glass to get everyone's attention. He wanted to say a few words before dessert. People gathered, and the room went soft and quiet as Frank put his arm around Carol and started talking about 40 years, about what he had learned, about the family they had built together. It was one of those moments that makes your eyes fill up even when you're trying to hold it together. Then Frank raised his glass and said he wanted to thank everyone who had helped make the day so special. And he looked at me specifically and mentioned my name and said he didn't know what they would have done without me. People clapped. I smiled. Jane caught my eye from across the room and gave me a look that meant everything. And then Bridget spoke. She didn't raise her hand or wait for a pause. She just started talking and her voice was calm and clear enough that the whole room heard her. She said she needed to say something before the party went any further. She said it with the tone of someone who had been holding back a difficult truth out of loyalty and had finally decided that enough was enough. The room got quiet. She said she had spent the past few weeks looking into the party finances, the catering deposit, the restaurant fee, the flower order, and what she found didn't add up. I felt the air go out of my chest. She said the original quotes had been higher than what was actually paid to the vendors, and the difference, somewhere around $3,000, had been transferred through accounts she didn't recognize. She said she wasn't making accusations, she was just presenting what she found, and she thought the family deserved to know. Then she looked at me. $3,000 missing, and her eyes were on me. The room was completely still. I could hear the slideshow clicking to the next photo behind me. James's face had gone blank, that particular blankness that meant he was trying to process something too fast and couldn't. A few people looked at me, some looked at Bridget, some looked at their plates. Carol touched Frank's arm lightly. I took one breath, then another. And then, because I had learned a long time ago that the worst thing you can do when someone wants to see you panic is panic, I did not panic. I asked if anyone knew the Wi-Fi password. Bridget blinked. A few people exchanged glances. One of James's cousins actually said the password out loud, I think, because she didn't know what else to do. I pulled up the password on the restaurant's network. I connected my phone, and then I looked at Bridget. I said that since she had brought this up in front of everyone, I thought everyone should see everything. Bridget's expression shifted. Just barely, just for a second. Something behind her eyes that was not quite confidence anymore. She said there was nothing to see. She said she had already explained the discrepancy clearly. I nodded. I said she had, and then I asked her if she could tell everyone again exactly how much she thought was missing. She said approximately $3,000. I said okay, and then I pulled up the first document on my phone and connected it to the restaurant's display screen, the same screen that had been showing 40 years of family photographs, and I let everyone see the full budget I had built at the start of the planning process. Line by line, catering, venue, flowers, decorations, the photo slideshow service, the cake. Then I pulled up the receipts. Every single one. I had them organized in a folder I created 2 months ago because I am by nature a person who keeps records. I was not keeping them because I expected to need them. I was keeping them because that is how I do things. I had photographed every receipt, uploaded them to a folder labeled Anniversary Party, Receipts, and I had not thought about that folder again until approximately 36 hours ago. That was when Bridget had called me. She had called under the pretense of asking about parking near the restaurant. Somewhere in the middle of that conversation, casually, she had mentioned that she had been looking at the vendor quotes online. She didn't say why, and that some of the prices she was seeing were different from what she would have expected. She asked if everything had been handled properly. I said yes. She said okay. We hung up. After that call, I had a feeling I could not shake. I did not know what she was planning, but I had spent 6 years learning to read the particular silence that comes right before Bridget decides to do something. So I opened my folder, I checked every number, and then I called the restaurant and the catering company and the florist to confirm that everything had been received and that the accounts were fully settled. Everything was fine. Every dollar was accounted for. But I also asked each vendor to send me a confirmation email just stating that the order had been paid in full for my records. All three sent them within the hour. I read them, file them in the folder, and didn't think about them again until I was standing in that room watching Bridget work her way around the guests with her phone in her hand. So when she made her accusation, I was not panicking. I was ready. I walked the room through every line of the budget. The original florist quote was $1,200. I had negotiated it down to $900 because I called and asked, and they said yes. The difference did not disappear. It stayed in the party account and was used to upgrade the dessert order because Carol mentioned once that she loved cannolis and the original dessert package didn't include them. I had the email where I asked about the upgrade. I had the revised receipt. The catering deposit discrepancy Bridget had flagged was because the restaurant had applied an early booking discount I hadn't known about when I got the original quote. Again, I had the email. I had the revised invoice. $3,000 accounted for, documented, every cent. The room was very quiet. Then I pulled up the confirmation emails. All three vendors, paid in full, dated and time-stamped. I let people read them. James had moved to stand closer to me at some point during all of this. I hadn't noticed exactly when, but he was there, a few feet to my left, and I could feel him watching the screen. Frank said slowly that it looked like everything was in order. Someone else said, "Yes, it really does." Bridget had not said anything for several minutes. She was standing very still near the edge of the group, and some of the confidence that had been in her posture at the beginning of this was no longer there. James looked at his sister. He said her name quietly, not the way you say someone's name when you are asking a question, the way you say it when you already know the answer and you need a moment before you say the next thing. Bridget started to say that she was just trying to look out for the family. James said that he heard her. Then he asked her still quietly why she had gone through the party accounts without asking him first. She said she had access because she was family. He asked how long she had been looking. She didn't answer. I stayed where I was. This was between them now, and I knew enough to let it be. James said that what she had done, standing up in front of 40 people at their parents' anniversary party and making an accusation with no proof, was not looking out for the family. He said it was embarrassing and he meant for her. Carol touched Bridget's arm gently and said that maybe they should talk about this at home. Bridget's eyes were wet. She looked around the room, maybe hoping someone would step in, would offer a different reading of the situation, would give her something to work with. No one did. She picked up her bag. She looked at me once very briefly, and then she walked out of the room. The door to the private dining room swung shut behind her. For a second, no one moved. Then Frank cleared his throat and said that 40 years of marriage had taught him that every family has its complicated moments, and that what you do after the complicated moment matters more than the moment itself. He raised his glass and said he still thought this was the best party he had ever been to. People laughed, a little cautiously, but genuinely. The tension shifted. Someone refilled their drink. The music came back up. Gradually, the room started to breathe again. James came and stood beside me. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said he was sorry. Not sorry, like he was apologizing for something he had done. Sorry, like he was apologizing for the fact that this had happened to me at all. I told him it was okay. He said it wasn't really. I told him I knew, but that today was his parents' anniversary and I didn't want the rest of it to be about this. He looked at me for a long moment, then he squeezed my hand and didn't let go. We stayed for another 2 hours. We ate cake. Carol hugged me twice, once in the middle of the reception and once on the way out, holding on a little longer than usual. Frank shook my hand with both of his, the way he does when he really means something. On the drive home, James was quiet for a while. Then he said he needed to tell me something. I waited. He said that Bridget had called him 2 days before the party. She told him she had concerns about the finances and that she thought he should look into it before things got further along. He said he had listened and then he had told her that he trusted me completely and that if she had concerns, she should bring them to me directly. He said she had gone silent on the phone and then said okay and then hung up. He said he hadn't told me about the call because he hadn't wanted to worry me and because he didn't think she would actually do anything. He looked at the road ahead of us and said he should have told me. I thought about that for a minute. Part of me wanted to be frustrated that he hadn't said anything, but I understood why he hadn't. He was still figuring out, after 35 years, how to navigate his sister. I told him I wasn't angry. I told him what I was tired. The particular kind of tired that comes not from the fight itself, but from the years of smaller things that lead up to a fight like that one. He said he understood. He also said that he and Bridget needed to have a real conversation, not a let's smooth this over conversation, but an actual one where he told her clearly that what she had done was not acceptable and that there would be consequences if it happened again. I asked what kind of consequences. He said that part of being a family was expecting people to treat each other with honesty and that he was no longer willing to excuse behavior that violated that. He said if she couldn't respect his wife, then his time and energy needed to go toward people who could. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He was quiet for a moment and then said, I mean it. I believed him. 3 weeks after the party, James sat down with Bridget. She cried. She said she had been watching me plan the party and feeling left out. Feeling like I had taken over something that she thought should have involved her more. Feeling like I was trying to replace her in the family somehow. James said he understood that she felt sidelined, but that her feelings didn't give her the right to make public accusations based on nothing. He said she owed me an apology, a real one, and that, until she was able to give that, things between them would need to stay at a distance. She called me a week after that. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She didn't start with excuses. She said she knew what she had done was wrong. She said she had spent a long time telling herself stories about me that weren't true, and she knew that now. She said she was sorry, not for how things had turned out for her, but for what she had done to me. I thanked her. I told her I appreciated her saying that. I didn't tell her that everything was fine because it wasn't, not fully, not yet. But I didn't close the door either. Some things take longer than a phone call to repair. I know that. She knows that. We're both figuring out what that looks like. What I do know is this. I spent 6 years trying to keep the peace by making myself smaller, swallowing things that should have been said, excusing behavior that should have been named. I did it because I loved James and I didn't want to put him in the middle, and I still don't regret that entirely. But the moment I stopped shrinking, the moment I just stood there in that restaurant and let the receipts speak for themselves, something shifted, not just in the room, but in me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't beg anyone to believe me. I just kept records and I let them tell the truth. And that, it turned out, was enough. I still think about the moment Frank said my name in that room, the way he looked at me when he said he didn't know what they would have done without me. I had worked 3 weeks on that party. I had made the calls, confirmed the vendors, built the slideshow from 40 years of photographs, and 30 seconds later, his daughter stood up and suggested I had stolen from the family. What I learned from that afternoon isn't something I could have put into words while it was happening. It took weeks of sitting with it before I understood what had actually kept me standing. The first thing was honesty. Not performed honesty, not honesty as a strategy, but the kind that just becomes the way you do things over time. I kept those receipts because that is how I live. I document things, I follow through, I don't cut corners. I didn't save those emails because I suspected Bridget. I saved them because I take the things I'm responsible for seriously. And when the moment came where someone tried to use my own work against me, the record I had built quietly and without any audience turned out to be the only thing I needed. That's the part that stays with me. Integrity doesn't announce itself, it just shows up when it matters. The second thing was clear thinking under pressure. When Bridget made her accusation, everything in me wanted to react, to raise my voice, to get emotional, to defend myself the way you defend yourself when you feel cornered and humiliated. I didn't do that, not because I was suppressing something, but because I had already thought it through. I knew what I had. I knew what the documents showed. I asked for the Wi-Fi password instead of starting an argument, and that one small choice changed everything about how that room experienced what happened next. Staying calm when someone is trying to destabilize you is not weakness. It is one of the hardest and most useful things a person can learn to do. The third thing is harder to name. It's something like endurance. The willingness to keep showing up with your whole self, even when a situation keeps asking you to make yourself smaller. 6 years of small comments, 6 years of not quite belonging, according to Bridget's version of the family. I had absorbed all of that, not because I had no spine, but because I chose my battles carefully and I refused to let her behavior define how I showed up for James and his parents. That kind of steadiness over a long stretch of time is its own form of strength, and I don't think I fully recognized it as strength until that afternoon when it finally meant something. None of this means the situation was fair. It wasn't. Bridget was wrong, and she knew it, and eventually she said so. But fairness and outcome are two different things, and what I have come to believe is that how you carry yourself, day after day, receipt by receipt, quiet decision by quiet decision, shapes what is available to you when everything finally comes to a head. I didn't win that afternoon by being louder or smarter or luckier than Bridget. I won it by being exactly who I had always been and keeping the proof.